Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Committee of a Whole for July 10th, and if Ms. Boak could please read the roll.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
Councilmember Garza.
Here.
Councilmember Hussein.
Here.
Councilmember Spatafor. Councilmember Spitzley. Here. Councilmember Jackson.
Present.
Councilmember Brown.
Present.
Councilmember Cost.
Here.
7 members present. You have a quorum of the committee.
Thank you. And for the public, Councilmember Spatafor does have an excused absence, which we will be taking up during our council meeting. With that, this is an opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment, please come up to the dais and state your name for the record.
Michael Lynn.
Good evening.
Good evening. How's everybody? So today you guys are going to be presented with an ethics complaint, similar to, well, I should say consisting of what the city attorney put out today up in the front here. I wanted to state real quickly before we get into that, you all were sent this. Eric is going to speak more to that and have an ask of you all. You all were sent the actual written out ethics complaint. And given the fact that we got a city attorney opinion on this, I hope does not deter you all from finding fact from our ethics board and an outside attorney. So we will still ask that you all sign on to that. That ethics complaint is written as it is. The findings that we need to find are whether the facts are right on our side or their side. The city's attorney's opinion was the same thing that was written in Jeffrey Brown's ethics complaint. It was a city opinion. And then it went to a third-party investigator to find out whether or not his opinion matched up. So again, I want to state, I'm really, I've been in, I was in a board meeting earlier today, the Diversity and Inclusion Board meeting, and the city attorneys, I understand the city attorney's efforts and job is to protect us. Although, at the same time, I continuously say we haven't recognized that we have a thief in our house. So when things keep coming up missing, we keep questioning why they keep coming up missing. Well, the city attorney has played the role of the bodyguard of that thief. So ultimately, everything that we want to try to hide or that we want to try to not be transparent about, like this is the most transparent thing I've ever seen from the city of Lansing, and it's in defense of the mayor. And it's the only time we get transparency from this office. So, at that board meeting today, the conversation just continued to come up. We'll send it to the city attorney for this. And they were asking a question of whether or not they could record their meetings for minutes. These meetings are all recorded. All of our board meetings are recorded at this point. Why is that even a question up there? But Kim Coleman lost her mind about it. She was concerned, scared that we're going to be recording the DEI meeting. Why would we be scared that they're recorded? For minutes' sakes. Are you scared somebody's going to say something in here that you can't take back? What is the concern there? So again, the OCA sat in there, the city attorney sat in there and said, well, we want to be able to take this back to us and figure it out. Which I imagine the opinion is going to come out that they're concerned about that, and then everybody's going to run with whatever the city attorney just said. The city attorney's opinions are fraudulent. They don't come out of a true perspective. They come out of a one-sided perspective, like any attorney in the world can do. Brian T. Jackson is the defense attorney today. He could be a prosecuting attorney tomorrow and argue the same exact case and make it sound amazing. That's what attorneys do. So stop taking the city attorney's, this right here, this opinion as law, and reach outside of this government that we have here to find truth. And what we're asking for is to find fact. We believe there's an ethics violation. We don't know there was to be fact or not. That's why our Board of Ethics is put in place. Put it in front of them. Let it go to an outside attorney to figure this out. All of you all were made aware of the ethics complaint. You all are aware that that ethics violation may have occurred. So the same energy he put towards you all with Jeffrey Brown, we're asking for that same attitude and attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time?
Hello, everyone. Erica Lynn. I'm actually going to use my time today to just read the email that I sent today with the attachment of the formal ethics complaint, just because I want it on record and I want my request formally on record and in the minutes. So this is to all members of the Lansing City Council. I'm reaching out to seek your support and signature on an ethics complaint that we will be filing against Mayor Shore at end of day tomorrow, July 11th. During the June 12th, 2023 City Council meeting, I raised serious concerns during my public comments regarding potential ethics violations involving the mayor's misuse of his title and public assets for personal and political benefit. I strongly urged for a thorough investigation into these matters, And I want to emphasize that the City Council was publicly made aware of these potential violations through said public comment session during the mentioned City Council meeting. Furthermore, Mike Lynn also expressed similar concerns in his public comments. Given the unanimous awareness among council members about these potential violations, it is important that you recognize your duty to support and sign onto this ethics complaint. Mayor Shore's alleged actions, such as using his title and public assets for personal and political gain, are matters that require prompt and thorough investigation. By signing onto this ethics complaint, you are not making any accusations nor assuming guilt in any way. You are simply acknowledging that there is a question of fact on whether any ethics violations have occurred. And merely this question warrants an investigation by the City of Lansing's Board of Ethics. Most importantly, you are demonstrating your commitment to upholding transparency, accountability, and the trust of our community. I kindly request your prompt attention to this matter. Together, I do believe that we can ensure that our city's integrity and ethical standards are upheld. So in addition to this being a public record, if I could approach President Wood, I would like to give the paper copy of that I request the signatures on, or, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Spitzley. Thank you, Erica.
And I would also like to add briefly, in the actual ethics complaint, there are 3 attachments in the email along with that, that is for review as well. I also request in there that we are requesting an investigation regardless of what the city attorney's opinion is. It is my understanding via the city charter, there is nothing that prohibits an investigation continuing regardless of what the city attorney opinion ends up being. So that is a formal request that I would like to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Anyone else? Seeing no one at this time, let's go back to the minutes. Councilmember Hussein.
Sure, I would move the meeting minutes from June 26th as presented.
We have a motion on the minutes. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now to presentations. Our first presentation this evening is our annual report from the Capital Area District Library. And if you would please come up, and you've been here enough, you know the drill. You've got your own table and your own mic and ready to go. And council members, at your desk on your place, there is a report, the 2022 annual report for you to review as they're talking to us. So please go ahead.
Council, thank you so much for having us. My name is Scott Dimstra. I'm the Executive Director of the Capital Area District Libraries. Joining me tonight is Melissa Cole. She's the head librarian of our Lansing libraries. We also have our 2 city-appointed board members, Brian Bayer and D.A. Jones, are in the audience as well, too. So I'd like to start by thanking you. They are 2 fantastic board members, so your appointments to our board mean a lot to us, and you gave us 2 fantastic individuals with those appointments as well, too. So as Councilmember Wood pointed out, you do have the 2022 annual report, and Melissa's going to talk about some of the stories and the values that we go through as a library, but I wanted to talk about the value of the library and kind of that return on investment that your residents get through their tax dollars that go towards the Capital Area District Libraries. So if you look on that handout, there's a section that says by the numbers. And what that covers is the return on investment that library users get by using the library. So what we did is we looked at just City of Lansing residents, and for 2022, they checked out just over 650,000 items. If you put a price on those items, and what I did for that is I took the average cost of a book. I know that we have a lot more items than just books, but I didn't want to inflate those numbers. So the average price of a book, it's between a hardcover and a paperback, and it's $17. So if you apply that $17 to those 650,000 checkouts, the return that your residents are getting is $11.1 million. And so if you look at the millage revenue that the library receives from the City of Lansing, it's $3.4 million. So they're getting that and then some based on that. And that doesn't even account for visiting in person our libraries, attending library programs, using the technology or the public computers that we have at our spaces, attending programs at our libraries as well too. So we wanted to share those by the numbers because your residents are getting a fantastic value for using the Capital Area District Library system. And it is a system that they're using as well too. So along with the City of Lansing branches that they're using, they also use our Aurelius branch, our Books by Mail program, our Bookmobile, our Dansville branch, the Hazlitt branch, the Holt branch, the Leslie branch, the Mason branch, the Okemos branch, the Stockbridge branch, the Weberville branch, and the Williamston branch. So your residents truly understand the benefits of a district library as well too. And before I turn it over to Melissa, I just wanted to briefly talk about the values that a library follows as well too, and it's one that we hold dear because you've probably seen in local or national media the challenges that libraries are going through as far as the materials that we have on our shelves. For us, it's important to represent every member of our community. So we have the values of open access, intellectual freedom, diversity, and community. And you see that when you use our collection, when you view our programs. We've had complaints as well too from individuals who don't agree with certain lifestyles or certain items in our collection, but we hold our values dear, and along with looking at the numbers and the success that we have with the usage, we also hold our values dear as well too. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa. She's going to talk about some of the programs and the values at the downtown Lansing, Foster, and South Lansing branches.
All right. Hi, everybody. I love to talk about the library, but I'm going to try to keep this brief for you. In 2022, downtown Lansing saw an 86% increase in visits from 2021. The downtown branch had the most visits in the cattle system in 2022. Downtown also saw an 85% increase in program attendance. In 2022, South Lansing saw a 24% increase in visits from 2021, and South Lansing also saw a 25% increase in program attendance. While these increases do not seem huge, South Lansing had the highest number of program attendance in the system. So people are using South Lansing. They love South Lansing. I was there on Sunday. It was crazy. In 2022, Foster saw an 82% increase in visits from 2021. Foster also saw an 88% increase in program attendance. For a small branch, Foster consistently performs well with 81% active card use. These stats exemplify the fact that the Lansing branches are well-used and well-loved part of the community. It shows that we are continuing to achieve our goal of serving the community and meeting patron needs. We've also worked with a variety of community partners this year. Advent House and their street outreach team has worked with us at downtown to connect patrons who are resource challenged to services that they need. We've worked with the CMH Families Forward program on a Stress Busters program for kids at South Lansing. We partner with we have an early on play group at South Lansing that's really popular. We participated in a grant-funded collaboration between Early On and MSU Community Music School to provide free music school classes at South Lansing for our patrons. We partnered with the Red Cedar Writing Project to bring some really great authors to downtown and South Lansing. We also partner with the Greater Lansing Food Bank, and we provide food packs to our patrons. So they can come in and get one food pack per member of their family once per week. And so that some people use that as a gap between like paychecks or other services, and it's been really popular, particularly at our South Lansing branch. We have lots of families and single adults coming in to use that. We also participate in Meet Up and Eat Up, where we serve lunches to school-age kids at downtown and South Lansing. We're doing that this summer again, and it's been very popular. We also visit the Lansing School District, and we work with Parks and Rec quite closely because we're at Foster. We held our ribbon cutting for our Foster Labs this year. Foster Labs are 2 rooms above our Foster branch that have tech in them for like STEAM-based programs, and it has a computer lab that has 10 computers. So we open it up when the library is not open so that the community can have access to computers. We also, at the Foster Labs, partnered with the city clerk's office and did a pop-up satellite office where people could come and do early voting and register to vote. And we partnered with the Ingham County Treasurer's Office and Capital Area Housing Partnership to provide opportunities for people to apply to get assistance applying for the MIHAF program. And something that I'm super, super proud of is we opened up a new baby toddler space downtown where, with the help of our friends of the library, of the Lansing Libraries, where it's just specifically for kids 4 and under. It has early literacy toys, and it's a play space for our youngest patrons where they can be safe. And it has a little fence that holds them in and everything. So, but I'm really, really proud of everything we've done in 2022, and I could talk about many more things, but thank you for your support, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Questions, and we'll start off with Councilmember Cost.
Thank you, President Wood. Yeah, you haven't met my 4-year-old nephew then, because he can climb any fence.
Send him down so we can test it.
Okay,
Okay, I will.
Climb it.
Yeah. It's more of just a statement. I want to say thank you. Your online local history availability is great. The first ward office here,
Yeah.
almost every picture hanging was one that was sent to me that I had picked out online. And they were able to blow it up, or, give me a good image, so I was able to blow it up and put it up of things that are no longer there. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the work you do, and I appreciate the Board of Trustees being here as well. I know Brian is here. He's a neighbor of mine and a fellow First Warder, so I know that you guys have some good trustees.
Yeah, thank you.
And then we have Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you for being here, and I just want to say thank you. I had the opportunity to do some tours with you all, as well as visit the sites and just see how innovative, inclusive, and community-based that you all are. The spirit of excellence and the cleanliness and just the staff. I mean, and all the branches that I have got to tour over the last year have been a true honor and just really inspiring and encouraging. So just wanted to say thank you. And of course, you have a great board, DA Jones, over there doing a great job, so acknowledge him as well. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Madam President. So I think we bring my grandson, who's 3, and your nephew, who's 4, and we'll take that challenge, all right, about whether or not. But
We make no guarantees.
oh no, you already said it now. We heard him. We're gonna roll back the tape. But seriously, for me, the ebooks are everything, and so you really didn't touch on. I know you could talk for a long time, but the electronic access that the library has is also great. I've got like 4 books right now downloaded on my iPad, but it's, so you guys are reaching far beyond just the pedestrian traffic that comes
Correct.
through. You have a very robust movies, magazine articles, and books. And so, for those folks who choose to download, it's a great asset. There's nothing like holding a book, and I will
Yeah.
do that too. But when I'm traveling, this is the greatest thing. So I
Correct.
just wanted to, don't sell yourself short. The e portion of your services are great as well.
Thank you for that. And part of those 650,000 checkouts are, a lot of those are digital checkouts. So we've seen that shift, and it's about 50% of our collection, the money that we spend, but also the checkouts that we have as well too. And we were very forward thinking. We started our ebook and digital audiobook collection in 2005. Most libraries were playing catch up. We were well ahead of the curve, and that has really helped with adoption, but also with the financial support that we could provide as a library system as well too. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yeah, first, it's good to see Scott and Melissa.
Yeah, we
haven't
like
seen each other
seeing
quite
you,
some
old
time.
friends.
It's good to see you. Exciting but not surprising, the fact that the South Lansing branch had the most program participants in, I think you referenced 2021. We know that particular location, critical, right?
Correct.
Positioned along a major north-southbound corridor, obviously incredibly dense residentially in that area, high need for those types of services in that area, walkable, bikeable, accessible via public transportation, the list goes on and on. But we also know there's always going to be some vulnerability with regard to that location because it's kind of unique in that we actually lease that space.
Correct.
Can you remind the body, the current lease has been extended through what?
We did it in 2021.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. Oh, I'm sorry. I would have to check my records, but I think we did a 5-year
Yeah.
lease.
Okay.
So it's 2026.
2026?
Yep. So
Okay.
we would probably negotiate in 2025.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And again, it's good to have the data on our side, but as somebody that frequents that particular location, I didn't necessarily need that data. It is packed at all times. And again, servicing people that truly need access to those resources, so we appreciate it. And then I would just remind my colleagues on council that I would continue to advocate for support in forthcoming budgets, 2026 and beyond, that we continue to financially support that particular lease. Beyond that, I have had some outreach from different groups. You think of like the work we did with Harmony. A number of groups that are doing some events, community events, back to school events, that type of thing. And they're interested in partnering with organizations such as yours. And I do know that you have the bookmobile. Are there other services, programs, things like that that you can actually be mobile with and come out to community events and the like?
Yeah, there are. So we actually, if you've seen our mobile library, it's this large vehicle with a beautiful mural on the side. We are actually in the process of retiring it. It's a one-off vehicle. So they don't make these that often, and so when they do make them, there's a lot of problems with it. And so ours we purchased in 2016. It's kind of met its life expectancy, so we're actually going to transition to 2 smaller transit vans, one primarily for adults and seniors and one for children, which would be fantastic for events. So if you have a partnership and let us know an event, let us know the intended audience, we could have those vehicles there to help out with those events.
All right.
We can also do tables. We can do tables and bring crafts and activities and information, and so we do that all the time.
And should folks be contacting you directly, or?
They can contact me.
Okay.
If they are interested in maybe seeing if we have availability for the transit van, they can reach out to me and I will see if that's possible.
Excellent.
I'll let them know what's possible.
All right, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Other council comments? I just also want to highlight the fact that you have the mobile hotspots, you have iPads, you have sewing machines, you have metal finders, you have games that you can rent for, utilize for family picnics. So if you thought the library was just books and newspapers and, movies and things like that, you name it, you might have it there. And so we encourage people to look at those as well, especially if you're thinking of purchasing something and you want to see how it works and whether it's something that you want to deal with. Go ahead.
I just want to say, that's one of the things that we've done is our mission statement is to empower our communities. And so we look at what the need is, internet access, addressing the digital divide, but also try it before you buy it, exactly what you said. And so that's why we built up that Library Things collection to empower the communities that we serve.
And they're always taking suggestions, by the
Yes.
way.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
If there's things that you think that might be useful for others, please don't hesitate to tell the staff what those things are, and there might be something that they can do to help with that as well.
I agree.
Okay. Anything else?
I just want to say that we don't do this by ourselves. We recognize our partnerships with all the municipalities that we serve. The City of Lansing, City Council, I thank you so much for the support that you've had for us and for the kind words as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you again for being here. And if you haven't visited your library lately, either online or at the physical building, go out and try it out. All right, thank you. Our next presentation is the Board of Water and Lights budget for fiscal year June 30th, 2024, and the capital forecast for fiscal year 24 through 29. Good evening, sir.
Try again. Good evening, council members. I'm going to turn this over to Heather Shawa, the BWL's CFO. She has a brief presentation prepared, and then we'll do our best to answer any questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Peffley. Good evening, council members. Thank you for having us. So I'll first walk through some highlights and it should follow generally the information that was provided to you. So a couple quick reminders of our budget and forecast objectives. Thanks. Maintain key metrics which help us maintain our rating agency ratings. So we have a AA- with S&P and a AA3 with Moody's. So those two key metrics, days cash on hand, which for the next fiscal budget year is 157, and then debt service coverage of 2 times. It's also important that we have adequate return on assets to continue to replace and maintain our infrastructure. Our return on assets recalculates every year, and for this current or this next fiscal year, it's 4.65%. Some key assumptions that were built into the forecast are water main replacements. We continue to support the ramp up for the 8 miles of water main replacement. Through the forecast, we achieved this in fiscal year 28, and that remains unchanged from last forecast year. Eckert and Erickson, as you guys are aware, we did retire those coal plants. We do have costs included, however, they're specific to environmental regulatory projects. Any decommissioning cost, we're currently reviewing and scoping out a master plan, so there's no cost there, and we'll be determining future courses of action once we fully vet that master plan. The forecast still has Altium battery plant at full ramp up in fiscal year 26. And again, overall, our budgeting, especially on the revenue side, is very conservative. We take a conservative approach, and as you are aware, we've historically met or exceeded our targets. Our rate increases, we are in year 2 of a 2-year approved rate increase. So the next rate increase is effective this November 1st. Any future rate increases after fiscal 24 are forecasted only, and we would go through our normal public hearing process and separate rate approval process that our commissioners would need to formally approve any additional rate increases. Moving on to the income statement. So for fiscal 24, it's shown by utility. Our revenues are just under $441 million for the operating year. Fuel represents nearly half of our spend, which is typical since we generate our own energy. A couple highlights from the cash flow statement. We continue to receive a gas pipeline payment refund in conjunction with our Delta Energy plant, the new pipeline. So based on expected usage, we have a line item in the cash flow of about $5.6 million. And we also have a borrowing this year of $8.8 million. That is in conjunction with our DWSRF, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. We were awarded a $32 million low-interest loan, of which $20 million of that is eligible for loan forgiveness. So we do show a borrowing this year. Moving on to our 6-year capital plan, we do show 2 different breakdowns for you. We have it by utility and by location. Our average annual spend over the 6-year forecast is $80 million of planned capital each year. Our top 2 areas of spend is electric T&D. So throughout the forecast period, that is our Lansing Energy Tomorrow program, and it's to continue to vacate us out of the Eckert property. So while the coal plant's retired, we still have our switch yard, and we have customers that we will be getting off that circuit, and we've got 4 substations in this forecast period. And the next item is our water T&D. We have 12 that supports our 8 miles of main replacement. We have $12 million in fiscal 24, and then that ramps up to $20 million at the end of the forecast period. That concludes my planned highlights, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Before we turn it over to council, our internal auditor, do you have anything that you'd like some clarification on?
Hi, yes,
Hi.
just one quick question. Thank you so much for the presentation. So the return on equity from BWL to the city, I know it's based on an agreement and you never know exactly how much it's going to be. But the budget that the city passed in May and this budget show a discrepancy of about 500,000. Do you know why that is?
Yes, currently this year, we're $1 million over the suggested payment, so the cities will receive, if the quarter wraps up like we anticipated, you'll receive $1 million more in our last quarterly payment than budgeted last year. This year, when we brought the budget forward, we saw we were a little more conservative wholesale. It lowered it, so it didn't marry it up, but I assure you, we will honor the 26.5 that's in the city budget, no matter what our revenue comes in at.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, I have Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. So I didn't mean to steal your thunder or Mr. Jones's thunder, but tomorrow there's an important meeting at the Board Water and Light. It is the All Source RFP meeting. You remember they put out an all source for different renewable and energy sources. They're meeting about it to discuss that. So that's tomorrow, 5:30 at the depot, which has to do with the future too, I presume, right?
10 years going forward, it'll show what our plan is, and you're correct, Councilmember Jackson. The all-source RFP is the gold standard. That's what the MPSC and the organizations like to see. We're the second utility to do an all-source RFP. And you'll hear at that meeting that we expected to get about 30 responses. We had over 100. 94 or 5 of them met our criteria, so it's taken a long time for a new department that was created to take us to carbon neutrality by 2040. They vetted those, and I'll be presenting the outcome of those to the commission with a lot of help tomorrow.
Thank you. Hope to be there, but that just takes me to my next question. So if you have the forecast for 24 to 29, then doesn't account for this important meeting tomorrow, or is it just a whole different?
I don't want to steal Heather's thunder.
No, great question, thank you. Another key assumption, anything resulting from the all-source RFP is not factored into this forecast. It will be factored into next year's forecast. So we have to finalize the plan, and then we are parallel putting together a finance strategy, but it will be in the next forecast period.
Is that it, Councilmember Jackson? Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Madam President. As my mother's been telling me, there's quite a lot of activity along Wise Road and Pleasant Grove there. So can you give us an update of what's going on?
Sure, that's one of the 4 substations that Heather previously mentioned. So that will replace the substations. It's kind of across the street right now. We'll decommission that and restore it to its natural habitat, and once this one comes online. So construction started over there, and it's progressing on time and on budget right now.
And when do you anticipate completion?
It's about another 12 months before we'll be out of there, approximately.
Thank you.
But it's going smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Councilmember Garza, Vice President Garza.
Thank you, Council President. Well, good evening. Thanks for being here tonight. It's more of a comment. I just driving over the bridge and noticed that the chillers are down off of on Grand River at the Eckerd plant. It looks quite a bit different. It looks really nice. I think you guys cleaned that area up really well.
Yes, our intent is, next stage is to remove the conveyor belts. We're trying to clean the building up so it's a nice looking brick building. We will maintain it for the next 10 years because that's how long it'll take us to get the infrastructure that's currently used in there replaced by the 4 substations. But I've made it very clear to staff that it's to look like a running, operating business in the city of Lansing. Yards mowed and driveways plowed, weeds kept down. And as we clean it up, it's looking better every day. We just last month took down a big silo out front that was kind of becoming an eyesore. So ultimate goal is to have a nice brick building there, sort of like our Ottawa power station was before we turned it over to the accident fund. So that's our long-term plan there. It will not look abandoned.
Right. No, it looks beautiful, and with the money that came from the state to fix up that Morris River pool, super excited how it's looking across the river there.
Yeah, we look forward to supporting that in any way possible by the Board of Water and Light.
Other, Councilmember Hussein.
I was actually going to ask, significant capital investment right off Pleasant Grove. Well, hopefully, right? I guess that was my question. So, critical location, near Ben Davis, obviously, near Lansing Tech.
Yeah.
You have the wooded lot right off obviously the street. Are there any aesthetic considerations being made with regard to that particular substation?
There's 4 of them under in planning and construction, so I'm not sure of each one, but our staff is very in tune to what things need to look like in the neighborhood. So if we have an issue, we would be happy to address it, and I can have staff send council what the finished product would look like. They have that done. I just don't know it off the top of my head. And we're always open to community involvement, saying, you know, can you plant something there? Can you shield this? Anything we can do that still keeps us compliant. When we took the towers down at the Eckert facility, everybody liked it. Now they don't like what they see, so we're going to do some plantings in there to make it more appeasing as you look across the river from that park. So, and that was not part of the original project. So, happy to show what the final substation is envisioned, and we're always open for suggestions. It's not a problem.
Okay, all right. The other question I had, I know we're ramping up. When we talk about main replacement, we talk about 8 miles per year. I know we're ramping up to the 8 miles per year. I also know that comes with significant infrastructure improvements, replacement, et cetera. When do we think we'll be at 8 miles per year? And then the second piece is everybody wants to know, how are we going to determine where we actually start that work?
Sure. Replacement is based on 2 criteria. One is it makes sense to follow the city as it does its CSO projects. And second is it's on water main break history. So we go to the areas where we have the most mains and plot that out and start doing that. Our intent right now is that out of this 8 miles, 6 miles will be done by Board of Water and Light employees. So we have to staff up for that. We currently do 1.5 miles, so that's a big lift for us. And the only reason we're not doing 8 is because typically when we partner with the city on the CSO, their contractor does the work. We just do the inspection. So we're going to allow that work to continue as it's been very successful in the past in our mind, and ramp up to 6 miles to ours. So we'll be at 8 miles in 28. Yeah, we're moving up about a couple miles a year. It's a big lift for us. I mean, just the equipment, it's a lot of disruption in the city, and we want to make sure that our PR people, our communication people are ready to do this. But the benefit is, some newer roads when we leave.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Madam President. Following up on Councilmember Hussein, I was walking along the track at Benjamin Davis the other day, and so, there does look like there's significant clearing right by the playground, and I'm assuming that you guys are gonna, berm that or plant something to kind of give another barrier between the park and the substation. I'm hoping.
Again, I'll look at it.
Yep.
I saw
Just thought I'd
these
throw
are
that
3 or
out
4
there.
definitely on my list to look at.
Okay, and then the other thing is, and I don't know if this is, so, a few years ago, there was some rate increases. Are we anticipating anything in the coming couple years on?
We're doing everything to keep it down, but you'll find that our renewable portfolio will set standards for every utility, and it doesn't come free, but we're very sensitive. We have battled our way back to an 18% differential between our newest competitors, so we're going to narrow that a little bit, but my administration has always we want to be at least double digits under any competitor so people will live and work in the city of Lansing. Right now, I look at it every couple of weeks, and 18% is a very good differential to attract people who live in the city and commercial and industrial customers, but we'll have to look to see how we pay for these capital improvements. Now, we are getting every penny that the state will give us free. We hired a full-time grant writer. Heather can tell you how much money we're requesting right now. Is it like 80 million?
We have about just under 100 million in asks out there currently.
Yep, and we've been receiving a lot of money. So every dime we get is one less dime that we have to put into a rate strategy. So I'm very sensitive to that because people don't have to live and work here.
Okay, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. So, Councilwoman Spitzley said significant clearing, and then it just reminded me when I first saw how many trees fell over there, and it really hurt my heart. I was like, this better be something good. So that's before I knew the plans. My point is could you go above and beyond and say, we're gonna replace that many plus one trees somewhere in the world, or greater Lansing, or wherever you have property at?
We'll look at that, and I'm very open to replacing trees. Our tree replacement program, even when it runs out of trees, I've gone back and opened the budget up and put more trees in there. I work with parks and other folks, to be sensitive to the tree canopy. I'm very familiar with the City of Lansing's tree canopy report. I read that, and we don't want to be the ones that detracts from that. So we are open to planting more trees. And, so if we have specific examples or ask, we'd be happy to try and accommodate those.
And just to finish, I understand that you guys have that program, but, and sometimes people don't know where to report and what it is. Maybe you could just have a little subcommittee that says, where can we proactively do this?
That's not a problem to do either. We have no problems addressing that and see what our customers need and want. We're happy to do that.
Other council member comments? A couple that I have for you this evening. First of all, the property on Penn, where are you with that? I know at one point you were looking at possibly selling that off.
We are dotting I's and crossing T's, and we'll tie that into an announcement to come this summer yet.
Okay, so that's still something that's on the...
Absolutely. It's a top priority. We've outgrown the facility. We think the facility's better back under, private control because it's river frontage. It should be a development area instead of an industrial site. And so we are doing the best to have plans to find an alternate site that is best for the Board of Water and the city.
And then back again to the 8 miles of water main work that you're working on. You do remember that there is an ordinance on the books that talks about the fire hydrants being done by the BWL employees.
Yes, very aware of that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just reminding.
No, I appreciate it because
Said,
I'm not up to speed on every ordinance by any means.
There was work that
Yep.
that the city was doing for the CSO that's
Yep.
still supposed to be Board of Water and Light people doing the fire hydrants.
We are happy to continue doing that.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. For another 175 days, I will remind you of that.
You can remind me after that, too.
Okay, and I probably will. Okay, other comments? Seeing none, we want to thank you very much for coming down, both of you this evening. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Have a great night. We'll follow up on these items for you, of course.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation is the illustrious Chris Swope, our city clerk, who's going to talk to us about the election process changes updates so that we can all moan and groan.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to come down and talk to you about the significant changes in elections that are underway. I've been the city clerk for 17 and a half years, and in my role, I have overseen the administration of over 50 elections. And yet, this Proposal 2 that was adopted by the voters last year is the biggest change in my term and probably in generations for the state of Michigan. Since the passage, these past few months, I've spent many hours in work groups, legislative work groups with Senator Moss and Representative Cernoglu, who chaired the House and Senate Elections Committees, along with many others, including Delta Township Clerk Mary Clark, Ingham County Clerk Barb Byram, and Mary Clerk Byram and I have all testified at numerous legislative committees, trying to provide input and make sure that these constitutional measures favorably benefit the voters as well as local jurisdictions. So I provided you the outline or the ballot language that appear before voters, but of course that's just a word number limited recitation of what the proposal covers. So I'm going to use that as my outline, and I'll go through in a little bit more detail many of the things that were highlighted in the ballot language. So first, recognizing the fundamental right to vote without harassing conduct. So that sounds simple enough, but it also provides that all Michigan citizens have standing to bring action for declaratory, injunctive, and/or monetary relief to enforce those rights. So the Constitution now gives individual voters the right to protect their right to vote without harassing conduct. So there's still legislation being worked on to clarify some of that. That's one of the ones that didn't make it past the gate before the legislature broke for the summer. Next would require military or overseas ballots to be counted if postmarked by Election Day. Now, we are already required to provide those ballots to military and overseas voters at least 45 days ahead of Election Day, and they do have the right to have the ballot sent to them by email if they choose. So now they have an additional right to get that ballot back to us, and it would require that it be postmarked by Election Day and received by 6 days after the election. And if the postmark is missing or unclear, then the voter has to sign a certificate, and that certificate, the date of that certificate is what would be used to determine if was postmarked by Election Day. And in a kind of a significant change in process, these are actually going to be, we will take the ones that we receive and deliver them to the county. We will not count them locally, so they will kind of be added into the tally later. And if you can imagine a very, very close election, it's possible that we, if it's 1 or 2 votes, or on a statewide basis, a few hundred votes, it's possible that the final results will not be known until all of those ballots are counted a few days after the election. Next, it provides the right to verify identity with photo ID or a signed statement. And that has been the practice in Michigan, where if you don't have ID, you go to the polls and you can sign a statement. That has been the place. So that enshrines that in the Constitution. There was actually a proposed initiative that never got all the signatures that would have actually changed that. And it also it's not clear exactly from that language, but it also expands what can be used as that photo ID. It adds local photo ID. So some jurisdictions have photo ID that they provide. I believe Ann Arbor and Detroit are a couple of examples. And it would also include county-issued CCW permits, since those are local issued photo ID. And it also expands to all educational institutions. Right now, there's some statutory limits on that, so those are going away. The next thing is to provide the voters the right to a single application to vote absentee in all elections. So right now, what we've had in the past is you can sign up to get an application sent to you for every election, but you still have to complete the application. Now you can do one last application and you are set to get a ballot by mail for every future election. We're calling that the permanent mail ballot voter list. So in the long run, it will save postage of us mailing those applications out, as well as staff time to receive them back in, check the signature for every election. Many voters, vote again and again by mail. And one thing for the presidential primaries, you may recall, voters do have to select which political party. So there will be a political party ballot selection form for the presidential primary. So every 4 years, we will still need to hear from those voters about which party they want to vote in. Since we don't have party registration, but for that primary, we do have separate ballots. And I will say that it is proving very popular. So we already have 10,600 people in the city of Lansing signed up for this, our first election. for the August primary, 93.5% of the people who are getting a ballot for the August primary are signing up for that permanent mail ballot voter list. Another one, and I'm going to break this bullet apart, requires state-funded absentee ballot drop boxes. Now, as you know, we already have a number of drop boxes in the city of Lansing, and the constitutional language requires equitable distribution, so looking at things like population, parking, and public transportation. And there's a requirement to have at least one drop box per 15,000 registered voters. Now, one of the ones that we had was state-funded, and it's actually the one that was the least functional box. It kind of was more like a book drop, and so we've actually removed that one. So we are looking at getting 6 new boxes to replace some of the ones that we have had issues with, some of our older ones, and the state will pay for those directly, have them shipped to us, and then we get reimbursed for the installation costs. There is a requirement in the Constitution that those be open for 40 days before the election and up until 8 o'clock election night to receive ballots back. There had been some legislation proposed that would have cut those off a day before, and there were some proposals that would have limited those. So the Constitution now heads off any potential contrary legislation. The other half of that is that state-funded postage for absentee applications and ballots. So that's the return postage from the voter to the city for both applications and ballots. And that, in the long run, the state will be paying that directly. But right now, because we have a supply of envelopes for the city of Lansing that have our own prepaid postage on it, they are going to reimburse us, and then once we actually move out of the SWAC location, they'll set up a business reply mail account for whatever our new address is, and we won't have to go through reimbursement for those. But as I think I mentioned in the budget hearing, we didn't know exactly how this was going to shake out and did not budget for that expense or reimbursement. So that's a little bit of an impact on my office's budget for this, for the fiscal year that just ended, as well as the upcoming one. All right, providing that only election officials may conduct post-election audits. As you may listen to the news and hear about talk of so-called forensic audits and other things that people want to do to raise false doubts on our election system, which I can tell you is safe, secure, and accurate. So this heads off that movement. It does, which hasn't been done in the past consistently, it does require that those audits that are done by election officials are done in public. So voters and members of the public do have now the right to come and watch and see what happens at those. But it does provide that election officials maintain custody of ballots and election materials. And as you may recall, I have been involved in audits in the past and been trained on the most comprehensive practices and have been doing that for a few years, as well as training other clerks on that. The biggest change in this proposal is the requirement for a minimum of 9 days of early voting. It's again, the biggest change, it's required in state and federal elections. Data from other states that have the 3 main mail systems that we will have, early, voting by mail, and voting on election day, it shakes out generally to roughly 1/3 of voters selecting each. There is a provision that no results can be generated until 8 o'clock p.m. election day. So, the voters will be putting their information in, but we will not print the reports or know what the totals are until 8 o'clock. And there are actually criminal penalties for early release of that information. And this is true early voting that we have not had in Michigan. The voters will have the opportunity to come in for those early voting days, just like a precinct. They'll get their ballot, they'll sign up, they'll go into a voting booth, and they will put their own ballot into the tabulator. So it's really something that voters have wanted. Some voters, have backed out of voting absentee because they want to put their ballot into the tabulator themselves. So this will provide that opportunity. And again, one thing that is in the legislation is that it allows a voter who's been mailed a ballot at home can actually bring that ballot to an early voting site, check in, and then cast that ballot at the early voting site. So I know some voters like to have their ballot at home so that they can do the research and study and mark it. So now they'll be able to actually take that opportunity and not have to redo a different ballot. They'll be able to just put that in the tabulator. As I said, it's required for state and federal elections. Historically, we've seen up to 54,000 people vote in a presidential election. If we get a third of the voters vote by early voting, that means about 18,000 people. 9 days, the minimum is 9 days, 8 hours each day. And at 18,000 ballots, that's 250 ballots per hour on average, which is not really possible. A couple of things. Additional days and hours under the Constitution are at the clerk's discretion, so we will be looking at doing that, as well as doing more than one site for the city of Lansing. But again, there are location issues with having these sites. I mean, we typically use a lot of churches and schools for election day, and I can't imagine a church or a school that's going to allow us those 9 days of using their building. So I think we are going to be pushed to our city, only our city-owned facilities, and particularly the community centers. I would also say, point out that 9 minimum days begins on the Saturday 2 weeks before or 11 days before the election, and extends through the Sunday right before the election. So it's 2 full weekends, which with supervising will impact the budget in terms of overtime for staff, although most of the workers will be election inspectors. And then the final note on that is that for non-state and federal elections, it is the jurisdiction's option whether to do early voting. So I will be coming to you with a resolution for the November election. I think things are still a little bit too unsettled and it's coming up too quickly to do this for the August election. But I do intend to come to you for a resolution to start the early voting for the November election. Just a heads up. The next point, it does allow donations to fund elections and requires disclosure of those funds. And as you may recall, we did receive significant funding from Center for Tech and Civic Life for the 2020 election, which we did put through the grant acceptance process here for the city, so it was fully disclosed. It had never been asked or answered before that, but now the Constitution clearly authorizes us to do that. And then the final point on there is that it requires the boards of canvass to certify election results based only on the official record of votes cast. And you may have heard some controversy of boards of county canvassers and other board of state canvassers voting to not certify elections or not certify the results. This clarifies that it is a ministerial duty to certify those election results. It is not a discretionary action for those boards of canvassers. And importantly, states now in the Constitution, the outcome of every election in this state shall be determined solely by the vote of electors casting ballots in this election. So, there had been discussion of other theories where the state legislature could make determinations outside of what the voters did. So this very clearly ties Michigan to the voters making the determinations. Couple other things that I want to highlight that didn't fit into the words that they were allowed to put on the ballot. It enshrines signature verification of absentee ballots in the Constitution and gives voters the right to notification and due process, including the right to correct or cure that. So if you forget to sign your ballot, or if the signature doesn't match what we have on file, perhaps because of a medical issue that you're having, or ongoing health changes, we will be notifying voters of that, and they will have a right to cure that. And the state legislature has adopted that voters on ballots that are received by the deadline of 8 o'clock election night will have till 3 days after the election to cure those issues if they're still outstanding. And again, like the military ballots that come late, those will be sent to the Board of County Canvassers and opened and counted in a public meeting. The amendment also provided for a state funding ballot tracking system that would also notify the voters of issues such as signature mismatch. As you may be aware, I'm sure you all vote, and I have your email, so I've been providing email notifications of voters, and I do intend to continue that, and we'll see where this state system will end up. Couple of notes on legislation that is somewhat related but not directly implementing. It has been passed, the House and Senate legislation to allow precinct size up to 5,000. It's currently 2,999. It allows additional options for polling places and would allow early processing of absentee ballots. I don't know how many of you, I'm sure none of you stayed up for it, but we didn't finish in 2020 counting the absentee ballots until about 9 o'clock the following morning. So under this, we would actually have a week where we would be able to process them during daylight hours and be able to have results closer to the close of polls from absentee voting on election night. And one note, though, all the enacting bills, none of them received immediate effect from the Senate. So we are in a little bit of limbo for a number of these things because they would not go into effect until the legislature adjourns sine die for the year, which typically happens at the end of December. So we have a lot of answers, but we don't have all of them. And with that, I just say I work hard to provide safe, secure, and accurate elections and give people the opportunity to vote early, vote at home, or vote election day. But please vote. And
Thank you,
I'm
Chris.
happy to answer questions.
Are there council member questions at this time? Yes, Councilmember Garza.
Thank you, Council President. Just for clarity, when you said that the end of this year's session, isn't it 90 days after that? So it would be
Yes.
like sometime in April, potentially?
Correct. So we have a presidential primary that is a state election, federal election that we have to operate, and many of these, the Constitution is in effect, but the guidelines of exactly how it operates are kind of in limbo, as is the date of the presidential primary election. State law was amended to change it from early March to the end of February, and that didn't get immediate effect. So there are some questions about whether the legislature might adjourn early, and then they could conduct further business through special session, but that all remains to be seen, or whether they will come to some agreement to get the 2/3 vote in the Senate to get immediate effect on these.
All right, and then the last deal is, when you said the photo ID says that you can use a CCW, I believe they're CPLs now. I don't think they use the term CCW anymore. Just,
You could be right. I appreciate the clarification.
thank you.
Are there other council member questions at this time? None? Okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Chris. We appreciate the in-depth information that you provided us, and we hope the voters that are listening have an opportunity to replay this and share it with their friends and family as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us on to discussion and action items, and the first is a resolution for the appointment of Benjamin Coleman. Am I saying that correct? Coleman? Quorum, okay. The at-large member for the Elected Officers Compensation Commission. If you're here and could come down to the well, we would appreciate it, sir. In your packet, you will see the application for this appointment. Benjamin, normally what we do is we ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to serve on this board, and then we open it up for any council member questions. If you would push and make sure that the green light is on and the center of your speaker there, and we welcome you, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Council President. My name is Ben Corman. I've been a Lansing resident for 30 years, I think, approximately 30 years. Prior to that, grew up in East Lansing. Live on the west side. I'm one of the less illustrious residents of Westmoreland Street who's been here this evening. And I currently work as a consultant mostly for in the city of Detroit. And both my kids went to public schools in the city of Lansing. And I was asked if I was interested in some kind of, public service and helping the city out in some way. And my general policy is if a mayor or someone of that ilk asks me to help, if I can at all, I will. And so I responded affirmatively when the mayor asked if I would be interested in being on a commission.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember Jackson, since this is your ward, even though it's at large.
Thank you, thank you. I have good things to say to Ben. Ben, good things.
Well, thank you,
But
Councilmember.
A real question, though. A real question. Dang. Now I lost my train of thought. I'm gonna get it back, but I'm not gonna
Okay.
answer.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that this is a great pick for the city of Lansing, and don't sell yourself short. You're one of the infamous members of that.
Well, infamy is not something people always want to claim, but at times
Yes.
there may be some infamy attached.
Indeed. So, but thank you for your service. I mean, I think that, anyone who answers the call is a great public service for the city of Lansing, so I'm glad you're up here.
Thank you, Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you. And Councilmember Jackson has remembered what he wanted.
Thank you. And just to your work as, for the elected officials compensation board, if you did all the work, you meet, you guys do your work, you all come together, you invite elected people to come out and put their input in, and then you come to a conclusion, how would you feel if it's just like not supported by us?
That's a good question, Councilmember Jackson. I'll be honest in saying I am not intimately familiar with the specific process that this commission goes through to arrive at decisions. And so my inclination is to say, if the decision is arrived at and adhered to the process that's prescribed in the city bylaws or the city charter, however it is, the process is described or determined, I'm confident in relying on the process having been followed as being a decision that I'd be comfortable with.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, Vice President Garza.
All right, thank you, Council President. With that, I move the resolution for consideration on the council agenda for the appointment of Benjamin Corman.
Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Sir, this is on the agenda for this evening. If you'd like to stay, you're more than welcome to, and you can be sworn in this evening. Understanding that the board isn't going to meet for some time, if you'd like to go home and enjoy the rest of your evening, we understand that too, and you just need to make an appointment with the clerk's office and be sworn in after council passage this evening.
Thank you, Madam President. The clerk's office has communicated that to me. I'll stay for as long as I possibly can to see if I can get sworn in this evening.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the Tri-County Office on Aging annual audit. And Casey, hi, how are you? And just so council members are aware, in your packet is the information. This is on for referral this evening, and it is requested that we vote on it this evening as well in order to make the deadline that's needed by Tri-County Office on Aging. And with that, I would open it up to Casey. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got
And
the light on.
yes, I found the light. Good evening. My name is Casey Cooper. I'm the Community Engagement and Fundraising Director at Tri-County Office on Aging. And just want to thank you for your time this evening. The 2024 Annual Implementation Plan is necessary to outline the programs and services that TCOA plans to offer with Older Americans Act and Older Michiganians Act funding, and to ensure compliance with these funding requirements. For 2024, TCOA programs and services will focus on expanding access in the Tri-County area, which is Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham counties, specifically to historically underrepresented groups, focusing on reducing or eliminating wait lists, quality improvement, advocacy efforts to promote public policy issues of importance to older adults and adults with disabilities, as well as caregivers, improving communication and strengthening partnerships with local community partners, improving transportation access, and improving and expanding access to caregiver supports. There are no new goals or significant changes for 2024. The approved goals in our multi-year plan continue under this year and can be found on our website or by request. And the administrative board, including our 4 City of Lansing council members, did approve this plan, our AIP, on their meeting on June 26th. And we'd like to thank you for your attention to this matter. We also would like to acknowledge that the timing was not excellent this year, but we would like to thank you for making it something that you paid attention to this evening to meet those state deadlines. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Are there any questions on the plan? Seeing none, Vice President Garza.
All right, thank you, Council President. With that, I move the resolution for consideration on the council agenda for the Tri-County Office on Aging Fiscal Year 24 Annual Implementation Plan.
And with that, do we have any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, and I don't see any need, Casey, for you to have to stay this evening, so.
Thank you.
Next that we have in front of us is a discussion on the executive directive from the mayor dealing with the oversight committee and the commission investigator. The reason that I had this put on the agenda was I had a few questions about this that I wanted to have possibly cleared up by the city attorney's office. My understanding under all the boards and commissions are that by the charter, they develop their own rules of how they're going to implement their committees and their different things like that. So I guess my question is, since this isn't an ordinance, this isn't a reorganization, why did this not come through the Board of Police Commissioners making an amendment to their rules basis other than an executive order? Councilmember Spitzley?
I also have a question about the process as well. And is there a role? It says in the charter, all rules and procedures shall be submitted to the city attorney for approval as a form. The rules shall then be submitted to city clerk for transmission to the city council. So I'm just wondering what the process has been through the creation of the board, similar to President Wood. I have some other questions, but that we can start.
Mr. City Attorney?
Well, this is not a
You're,
This really is not an amendment to the rules. It's an administrative decision by the executive branch to create an entity, a advisory body known as this investigation, and it goes hand in glove with the ordinance that creates the police investigator.
I beg to differ with you, Mr. City Attorney, because in their rules, they do have a committee already set up. That's part of their rules that they have. So what this, in reading this, what this does is add another member to it, which I don't necessarily have any objection to, but I'm trying to figure out the procedural. Why was it not the mayor making that recommendation to the Board of Police Commissioners to change their rules versus an executive order?
I don't know why the decision was made by the executive branch as to going one way or the other. What we had was an executive directive that this was to be constituted, and that's what we approved. I don't know, Deputy Director, do you?
I don't have any other information either. City Attorney, we'd have to go back and ask.
So we're going to take Councilmember Spitzley's questions, but I think if we, and we'll get to Councilmember Jackson in just a second. I think if, Ms. Boak, if you would please make sure that you're getting all these questions down, because what I'd like is these questions turned back over to the city attorney to get an opinion on where we are with some of this stuff, because I just...
Madam Chair, I wish that we would get these questions before I get asked these questions here, so that I could have the chance to prepare the history and also review the charter. There is so much on the police commission in this charter that there needs to be an analysis.
And I appreciate that, Mr. City Attorney, but as you can see on the agenda, this is just a discussion. We're having an open discussion here. We're putting the questions together that you can take back. We're not taking any action. We're not trying to put you on the spot. We're trying to listen to everybody's concerns and trying to make sure that we have a better understanding.
But for matters of efficiency, if I would have known exactly where this was headed, then I could have at least given you a base to work from, so you'd have it. We will answer all of your questions.
Okay. Councilmember Spitzley, then Councilmember, did I see Councilmember Jackson, and did I see Councilmember Hussein? Sure. Okay. Sure.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess, it would have been nice for us to have someone here to explain this whole thing. I understand you put it on there and we got the memo, but, with all due respect, it would have been nice to have someone here.
I will tell you that Ms. Shelby did ask me, did I want somebody from HRCS here? And I said, no.
Well, why would we have HRCS when this is an ED from the mayor's office? I'm just asking.
I know, but she asked if I wanted, and I said, no, this was a council discussion at this time.
All right,
So,
that's my first one. Sorry
Okay.
about that. Didn't
so
bring that up.
don't put her on the
No,
spot.
no,
You
no,
Put
I
me on the
wouldn't.
spot on this one.
But I think, and I understand what you said about HRCS, but if it's an ED, it's an executive directive. I think that someone from the mayor's office, with all due respect, not putting you on the spot, should have been here to kind of explain this. The other question I have is, the purpose of this ED is to establish the Citizens Complaint Oversight Committee within the board to replace the current Board of Police Commissioners Citizens Oversight Subcommittee. So I'm just wondering what was wrong with the past subcommittee, and, and why are we having this new one? I see it says it aims to strengthen guidelines for the board's existing citizen complaint review process. So I'm just wondering, how are those subcommittee people going to be picked? What was wrong with the initial committee? So if we can write those questions down, I'd be interested in hearing those as well.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Jackson, then Councilmember Hussein.
So I'm just going to try to ask a few questions and also try to talk to my colleagues here. So this is in response to George Floyd. That's the first sentence. His death back in 2020. And based on community-wide discussions, they came up with some plans, including putting the MRECJ together and the first DEI officer. So I guess what would the DEI officer, any implementations for the city, what have they done so far? Just curious. I know there's a few things. But as far as this is concerned, and also what was the outcome of those community-wide discussions? Like what did we, I know there's a plan in here, but it's not attached. And I should have read it. But then, after appointing the MRGEA and their inputs, they accomplished numerous goals, and that's the top of page 2 of the executive order. I guess, what were those goals? And then, for the Citizen Oversight Commission being one of their implementation things, I guess they came up and said, we need a Citizen Oversight Commission. And again, what's wrong with, but what it does is it takes, instead of going through the Board of Commissioners, it makes the ultimate person the head of HRCS, and that's in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. It puts HRCS director instead of the Board of Commissioners. But then, after all those paragraphs, I can't read them all. I did read them all, but I can't right now, where it says, 2 from the bottom of, or on page 2, 2 paragraphs from the bottom. Thus, the purpose of this executive directive is to establish a Citizen Complaint Oversight Committee, CCOC, within the board to replace the current board of Police Commissioners Citizen Oversight Subcommittee. The newly established CCOC will aim to strengthen the guidelines of the previous board's process. So my point is, that's why I said executive director, because there's other things that, were put in place, and this is one of them, but I don't think it really does much, and I don't even know if it complies with the charter.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Hussein, then I'll get back to Councilmember Spitzley.
Yeah, in considering Councilman Jackson's comments, I do think we need a comprehensive presentation at some point. Because, I think the spirit of this recommendation from the MRGEA, was to add transparency, accountability, credibility to the process. But what it feels like is that really what we're doing is, renaming a committee that really already existed, growing it by one member, As I understand it, the chair of the Police Board of Commissioners would appoint
Right.
these 4 individuals and then determine who would be the chair of this particular oversight commission, much like we do on city council. When I read the suggestion from the MRJEA, I always took it as if they were asking for a separate entity from this board. And then I think the following question needs to be asked and answered. Is there anything pertaining to our own charter, our own ordinances that prohibit the development of that type of entity? But again, to me, I think this is more about perception than about real and impactful change. So I think that's the first piece. And then with all due respect, Mr. Shmirka, I would think that we would anticipate some of the questions that were asked. Those were not gotcha questions. Very simply put, is this something that the mayor actually had the power to do through executive directive, particularly when you're talking about the renaming of and kind of the reconstitution of. So, I mean, very, very simple questions. But again, at some point, I think a broader presentation and opportunity to ask questions would be great.
May I respond to that for a second?
Yes.
Yes, it is empowered in the charter, and it's found in Chapter 3, 5-301.2, 3, and 4. 5-301, sub 2, 3, and 4. And you see, the Board of Police Commissioners is not an advisory board. It's the one that has special duties. And in these 3 sections, there is a contemplation that the rules will be developed in consultation with the mayor. In each of those sections, the procedure for complaints in consultation with the mayor. And again, as Councilmember Jackson mentioned, this came out of the whole MRJEA initiative with their recommendations. We'll answer the specific questions, but this is clearly allowed. And again, I'm assuming there were these conversations that were held with the mayor and the Board of Commissioners, but this is clearly within those sections of the charter.
Councilmember Spitzley and then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Madam President. So it talks about the Citizens Complaint Oversight Committee, CCOC structure, and that this is in the ED. It replaces the current Citizens Complaint Subcommittee within the board. The new CCOC shall be comprised of 4 members of the Board of Police Commissioners. So is that not new members of the public? This is just the existing Board of Commissioners. So this really isn't a Citizens Oversight Committee, or is this, or am I reading it wrong? It's a Citizens Complaint Oversight Committee that existing board members are going to be reviewing and adjudicating complaints, not a citizens board that that citizens are appointed to. Is that correct?
Yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is the argument is that the Board of Commissioners are made up of citizens that are appointed to the Board of Police Commissioner. I'm just giving.
No, I got you. I appreciate what you said, but I think in the spirit, that's not what I think the people intended when they asked for one. And then I'm looking at, Jim, I'm looking at what you're saying, 5-301, which is the Board of Police Commissioners and the duties. And it says the board shall establish administrative rules for the organization and overall administration of the department, including promotional and training procedures in consultation with the chief of police and mayor. These administrative rules shall not be effectuated in accordance. So I'm trying to figure out where specifically, and I know that you're going to be looking at this and providing questions. So I need to know, one of my questions is, I need to know specifically under 5-301.1.2.3, where is
Point
the...
4.
Oh, I'm sorry. The board and their rules shall establish a procedure for receiving and resolving any complaints concerning the operation of the department. So when they modify, so this is not a modification of existing rules. They're just saying you're gonna do
They
this through
agree
ED.
that, yeah. I mean, I was not involved in the conversations between the mayor's office and the police commissioners, but it is contemplated in point 4 that they could develop this entity. But again, I will do a complete review. And again, this is not I know that maybe I'm splitting hairs there. This is not an executive order. It has no force of law. This is a management directive. That's why it's called executive directive.
Okay. I think that's, I think that section that allows them to do this, I think that that's a stretch. You know, the rules allow X, Y, and Z, and that's what we're hanging our hat on, that because it, you know, it says that the board may enact rules, that gives the authority to do this.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, I just kind of concur with what everyone's saying is about clarification, oversight, because, you know, the people were concerned about this and wanted to make sure that the complaints that they had, you know, I've talked to several constituents over the time, you know, people are, you know, afraid if, you know, certain interactions have taken place and want to make sure that they're empowered. And so even us as a council tonight are not sure of how this thing is put together. So I think it's very important that we get that clarification that everyone's been speaking about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councilmember Jackson.
And just to add to the question list, because one of the other main things it does in the middle of page 2 is that it says the CI's office, however, is located within the Department of HRCS, and the CI reports to the director of said department with HRCS director and the chair of the board. So it just also brings the HRCS director, who has a lot of hard and serious work to do, which this is also hard and serious. So why would we want, as a city, to also have our HRCS director, whoever that is, in the future, in perpetuity, dealing with something city-related that's so sensitive and somewhat outside of their expertise?
Just for some clarification, and then we're going to try to button this up because it is after 7. Councilmember Jackson, in the ordinance that creates the citizen investigator, it does say in that ordinance that they will be housed in HRCS and that the day-to-day responsibility is under the HRCS director, and that's been that way for years. They are supposed to, though, be responsive to the Board of Police Commissioners. They're the ones that are supposed to be giving that person the directive of how they're supposed to handle that. Councilmember Hussein.
Nope, I was simply going to say that most of what you just stated is already reflected in practice now. With that, I'll go back to my original statement. I mean, it's important. It's an important question that we are able to answer whether or not there was the authority to actually do this. But I want to make sure that we're not losing sight of, okay, even if there was, how does this enhance what we are doing now to, again, add transparency, credibility, and accountability to the process? Thank you.
And right now, unless, as council members read through this, if by Wednesday if you come up with additional questions, if you would please get those to Sherry so she can put that together for the administration as well as the city attorney's office. And then currently what we will look at is having it on the 24th. Okay? And if we need more time, we'll then move it to that first meeting in August. Yes,
Madam
Councilmember.
Chair, there will be 2 council members not here on the 24th, me being one of them. If you want to do it on the 24th, that's great.
You would prefer it at the first?
I would prefer to be,
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll do it in the first meeting in August that we have, okay? All right. Then just quickly, Shelby, do we have any additional updates on the South Washington complex as far as where the departments are being relocated?
Yep, just to add on from what we discussed the last 2 weeks, Councilmember Cost had a question about would the Ovation folks move into the old facility on South Cap, and the new people would move into North Cap. I gave you a call back to let you know that the Ovation folks would go into the new building, and then the City TV folks will go into that existing building already on South Capitol. But the City TV folks are scheduled right now to go into the North Capitol ramp. So where the old Gibson's was. Right now, we're gonna build that out, and that'll be kind of a temporary space until the Ovation is built. There is some IT infrastructure out at SWAC that's going to move to City Hall. The current 311 folks are looking at the 5th floor 911 center. If you guys have been through that, kind of on the other side of OCA, looking to just basically move that current furniture over and clean that area up, hopefully for a low-cost option. Clerk's office is still looking at Rio. I did confirm with the clerk that parking will work out there. It's not perfect, but I think it's enough to get by here, at least temporary. Nothing's been finalized in negotiations right now with the current Rio folks. Of course, there's a bunch of storage documents and things that all department heads right now are going through and purging what they can or storing what needs to be stored. And some of the outhouse buildings are getting cleaned up and those things are getting relocated, the things that are on the outside of the building. So we're underway. Nothing's 100%, but we're getting closer by the day.
And Shelby, if you could, if not the next meeting, then the one in August, if you could give us a tentative idea of cost, because these are additional costs that I don't believe, unless somebody can point them out, that were in the budget for some of these moves. So there's going to be a cost out there, and we would like to know what that is.
Yep, absolutely. I will share, we do have approval. Some of the bond issuance will cover some of its displacement costs, not all of it, especially things like rent. So we'll have to talk about those, but I'll put it all together and be prepared.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, apparently we're off the air again. So we're going to adjourn, and we've got 5 minutes, and then we'll start our council meeting. We are adjourned.